Thanks, Ruth. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Thanks and thanks everyone for the warm welcome. Um, it's a privilege to speak in this forum. I know it has been long overdue. I've had discussions with Albert, Sam on one day having to uh, give a session on one of the topics, and I was hoping that I would do something technical. Uh, but after researching a topic that I could present and understanding that most of these, the quorum here is mostly students and people that are starting out in their journey, I thought I would give insights on um, what I believe it's as a best path to become a cloud engineer. So I will share my screen. So kindly confirm when you can see the screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen. The screen is visible.
Okay, thanks. So the topic for today, as Ruth has mentioned, is unveiling the path to becoming a cloud engineer. I'll start by a brief background about myself. I think as Ruth has presented, and I know most of you after this definitely with curiosity, you've had a pop in my LinkedIn page. So currently, I'm a technical architect at FITS, where I'm responsible for designing, implementing, and maintaining cloud solutions, mostly in Azure, but we also support uh, other cloud productivity, mostly on AWS and GCP. Before that, I used to be at Jubilee Insurance, where I held a few roles in IT infrastructure and eventually headed a team as the head of cloud services for a period of 4 years. And before that, I was at a company called Smoothtail and Data Solutions, which I credit for molding me, where I started as an intern, and uh, and a huge part of my career I learned when I was there, where I held various positions and grew my career from one step to another. So, in terms of certifications, I hold multiple certifications, mostly in networking. Networking is one of my major passion, and in security. And now with the transition to cloud, I also hold a few, not so many certifications in cloud, uh, mostly again in Azure, a blend of AWS and Oracle and GCP. I also hold other certifications in other platform, project management, ITIL, uh, just supporting certifications in the journey of becoming um, a technical architect in cloud or in any other IT related field that are required for you to support to perform your duties. So we'll deeply get into the conversation. I'm hoping that the presentation and the slides will be as minimal as possible, so that we can get um, more time for Q&A, which I'm expecting would be um, an interactive session. So I think I would like to start with an analogy. So um, in the IT field, uh, and I know most of us, we've had this, that either a relative, a parent, uh, a friend comes and tell you, Kennedy, I know you're in IT. I have my phone here that is, uh, messages are disappearing, or I know in IT I have a microwave here that lost something, and there's that perception that when you're in IT, you can perform magic in electronics, or you would do anything that technology is able to do. And in that, I like to compare IT with and in this I'm basing this the entire IT career with any other, and I would say this in quotes, any other noble careers that uh, are regarded in society as the higher tier, like doctors, lawyers, and all that. And I like to give an example of a doctor that when you go to school to become a doctor, you first try to become a general doctor. And then after you become a general doctor, then you specialize. And then after you specialize, now you become a neurosurgeon, you become a dentist, and now uh, you get to define your skills and an approach on what you want to do in the future. So in IT also, when we were in school, uh, those of us that have finished, or the ones that are still in school, you do everything and anything. But then after that, there's that period of time that you would need to decide uh, on how or the path that you want your career to take. And that's why now, with this day and age, I would believe that the most lucrative careers in IT are something to do with AI, machine learning, cloud, depending on not even depending, according to the trajectory that technology is flowing. And one of the uh, careers that is really growing hugely, and that's why we are here, is cloud. And the debate will be there on where the cloud journey is going, how long others still think that we will remain on premise or cloud will fail and come back on premise. But the fact remains that more and more companies are taking their operations in cloud. And with that, there is need to have professionals with skills who can design, implement, and manage cloud-based solutions. And those skills will always be in demand for the next, I don't know how many generations, until maybe something else will come. Maybe we'll have now servers being under the ocean. But for now, uh, for the cloud journey, it is here, and it's a career that will be there, and the skills are really in demand. So in this presentation, we will discuss the skills that are required to become a successful cloud engineer, and the training and certifications that are needed uh, for you to start a journey, or cement yourself in the cloud um, technical skill professionals environment, and how to gain hands-on experience either through project or through work for us that are others that are employed or others that are still in school, how you can be able to do um, project and hands-on practice to do that. So we'll start with the skills required. And this slide can be scary. And I know most of us would come and ask, so Kennedy, how do you expect us to understand 10 technologies? And I would go back to what I mentioned earlier, that you would need to choose a specialty and specialize in that. But now, when we get to cloud, you would need to get a blend of many skills. And looking at this slide, I try to separate it to good to have and must have. And one of the skills that I believe is a must have when you are starting a journey in cloud or any other uh, tech related career is networking. And the reason I say that is because networks are the building blocks, the core of any technology architecture that will get anywhere. Whether it's a database, whether it's an application, whether it's uh, anything that to do with the AI, somehow underlying it is running on an IP. So TCP/IP is one of the skills that you would need to have a knowledge of, and some sort of experience of working around on how networks operate, even if you do not become a network engineer, but you would need to understand on how they operate. So um, nowadays, applications are moving into containerization, and that is another, will be another topic for a day. When we start talking about containerization, we'll talk for a whole day. So you will need programming. DevOps has become a major things now. You would need to do something like CI/CD. Uh, Web services, of course, most of the technologies that we face today, at the end of the day, is an application that is behind that. So whether it's underlying, a user would want to see what an application is doing for them. Uh, Another must-have skill would be Linux. I know a lot of us, including myself, we are afraid of Linux. But it's a skill that uh, you would um, really encounter it one face or another. So, and again, I'm not saying that you need to be a master of it. You would need to learn at least basics, and have your way around in Linux. So another thing, and a lot of infrastructure guys like myself are scared of, with the way the trajectory is going, and how uh, the cloud environment is flowing, automation has become a big thing. And with automation, you would need to at least learn one programming language. Um, and as going through this presentation, I'm trying to give, um, I would call an experience, or something that I know of myself. I struggle with this topic a lot of learning one programming language, because in school I hated programming. And even when I started my career, anyone that would talk of anything programming, we would not see eye to eye. But now, with the way automation is becoming a must-have skill in this industry, it is required for you to learn a programming language. And I would recommend Python. For any programmers that are here, I would say it's an easier to learn language, and there's a lot that you can do with it. And most of uh, the automations platform that are there run on Python. Uh, Speaking of automation, Terraform is a big thing, and Ansible, and these are skills that would help you in your career. And then lastly, security. I don't even think I would need to talk much about security. It's self-explanatory. Uh, Anything to do with security, any organization would put that at a higher scale. So it's something that you would need to have also. And in any career path, soft skills are, I would say, mandatory. And other than the ones that we learn in school, communication skills, I don't know, presentation skills, things like those, the common ones that we learn in school, there are some that I believe would be specific for a career in cloud. For example, the ones that I've listed here: adaptability. You would need uh, to adapt in changing environments. Today, you would come, somebody wants you to set up an application that is running on something different other than what you would used to know. So you would need to have that skills to adapt to things that are changing. Critical thinking. So most of the times, especially in IT, you would get solutions or problems that are not, I would say, not making sense in a way, and you would need to think out of the box to be able to resolve a solution that you face. The last two, my favorite ones, continuous learning, of course. If you choose a career in IT, it's either career that you want to. Learning becomes a part of your life because technology changes every day. And for you to adapt, going to the first one, you would need to keep learning. And lastly, you would need to know research. You would need to do a quick research. And I like to say that Google is your friend. A problem that you are facing today, most likely someone faced it yesterday. So with a quick Google research, you can be able to resolve most of the challenges that comes with being a cloud engineer. So for you to develop those skills that you need to become um, a cloud engineer, you would need uh, to learn to develop those skills. And how do you learn? So the major one, of course, would be to gain certifications. And this would be to the major cloud providers, that is Azure, AWS, and GCP, of course, because this certification would show a to be employer uh, that you have those skills uh, to execute your work as a cloud engineer. Secondly, online courses. As I mentioned, I think there is no career that has a lot of learning materials other than a tech career. When you go to YouTube, the training courses that you would get there for free are humongous. Are many that you actually get spoiled for choice on what you would learn. So uh, other than the certifications that you would have, most of them would not. Uh, they would show on paper, but if I gave you an activity to do uh, that a certificate shows that you are able to do that, most of us, including myself, it becomes a little difficult if you don't uh, get additional training and insight from additional training courses. Now, I would want to mention something on online courses. Um, because I'm a victim of them, and I know most of us, when you're starting on this career, you will get into that. There is a lot of content out there that you can be able to train on one particular path or another. But deciding on a content can become a challenging skill. For example, you might get three courses that will tell you how to become a DevOps engineer in 2 hours, or how to become an Azure architect in 4 days. So when you are using online courses to train, it is good to come up with a structure of what you would need to follow, and goals of what you would need to achieve for you to follow a particular path, and keep milestones of how you are achieving those, and do not get a lot of them at the same time, so that you even lose focus on what your end goal is. And finally, hands-on projects. Nothing beats practice. There is no amount of books that you would read out there that would uh, change, that would give you, uh, that would replace hands-on experience. The things you read on paper and the things on the ground. In Kiswahili, we say vitu kwa ground ni different. So when you do, and as we say, practice makes perfect. With hands-on experience, it would never go wrong. Now, somebody would ask, Kennedy, I am a student, or I'm not employed, or I don't have a platform to test this hands-on project, and that's why uh, I decided to give a little bit of insight of how you can be able to practice and get hands-on experience on these environments. So there are several ways you can gain hands-on experience. It's like by building your own project. Most of these cloud providers, Azure, GCP, AWS, give trial accounts where you can be able to set up your projects, uh, run them through the environment, get to test them on a real working environment. And there are people that have created projects that you can be able to follow through out there. There are a lot of uh, repositories that you would find on GitHub that have projects that you can be able to test. Do that on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, by the way. People share a lot of ideas and projects that you can be able to implement to gain all those skills that we mentioned on the previous slides. Another thing is contributing to open source projects. So people, again, on GitHub, on our other CI/CD tools, you see projects that are being set up there. How and collaborating and having discussions like the one we're having now would give you insight, and you get to learn from other people and get to practice the same uh, uh, projects and skills that you put in play. So I can't sensitize you have that there's nothing that would beat experience. So keep learning, keep challenging yourself. The more you work on project, the more you learn, and the better prepared you become for the career, for your career as a cloud engineer. And I think I did good on time. So we can go on the Q&A.
Thank you, Kennedy, for that insightful session. At least I've learned a few things and for walking us through the journey to becoming a cloud engineer, the skills required, both technical and soft skills, the training certifications that one has to do, and getting us through the on how to gain hands-on experience, especially with projects, and now to the questions and answer session. For those who have questions, kindly raise your hand and pose your questions to our speaker. Yes, Samson.
All right, thanks, Ken. Thanks for that, and I love the way you started by just outlining all the whole spectrum of skills that someone needs. It it looks scary, but it's the truth. But now I'd like just to be the devil's advocate on the on for you, definitely from your experience. What as maybe some of the challenges or the blockers that you've encountered? What can you say has been? What are the things looking back? What are the things that you've the hurdles that you've got to face as you build your career in cloud?
Okay, thanks, Sam. That's a very good question. So, uh, I started a career from an on-premise environment. So, and that has advantages and disadvantages in itself. So, having to learn how some of the workings work in an on-premise environment, and how the cloud and now transitioning to cloud became a little bit difficult with the traditional um, thinking. For example, um, networks in cloud operate differently from how they operate on premise. Having the skills to manage a network on premise definitely has advantages because it becomes the transition, it gives the transition to cloud a little bit easier. But the hurdles now come in when you are trying to either set up or troubleshoot an issue with the mindset of a traditional environment. So that's one of the things that I've really struggled with. Um, the other thing is learning, and as I highlighted before, is not having a direct path of how you would want to learn something, and then I would find myself picking up five things at a time, and um, not really completing one before picking up another, and got confused somewhere in the middle. And I think lastly, another challenge is articulating these issues. For example, uh, in interviews or presenting those skills uh, that you know, but articulating them to someone becomes a little bit harder. I hate PowerPoints. I hate presenting. By the way, when you and that is something that now is a required skill. You can be very good in technical, but as long as you cannot explain that to your boss, they're not hata approve or something like that. So I think those are most of the challenges that are faced in this journey.
Nice. Thanks, Ken.
We have a question from Maureen. She's asking, apart from coding, how can one contribute to open source projects with building cloud infrastructures?
Okay. So most of the open source projects that are out there for cloud actually do not really involve coding. So uh, I mentioned a skill that you would need to have, uh, uh, like learning one programming language. But 90% of the time, you would not need to use that anywhere, not unless you are doing automation. So in those projects that are there out there in GitHub and other platform, do not require you to know coding per se. You might get up with setting an application that is already made and having to publish it for it to be available publicly. So there are other, to answer the question, is there are a lot of things that you can do in the cloud environment that really do not involve coding.
Okay, thank you. I believe, Maureen, you're okay with that answer. We have another question from Big Time Solutions asking, how can you advise a beginner with regards to choosing between the different cloud platforms to learn between AWS, Azure, and GCP?
I was expecting that question. Um, I I I don't think there's a cloud provider that is better than the other, but I believe, especially in learning cloud, sorry, there there is some cloud providers that are easier on how or have easier paths to learn than the other. For example, I found Azure very easy to learn and understand than AWS or GCP, because most of how the environment is structured would be easy for any beginner, and AWS becomes a little bit complex, or and GCP on the same. But all in all, I think it goes down to the console and what they provide, because it's like driving a car. It doesn't matter if you drive a Mercedes or a Nissan. Once you get into the console and you know the concepts of cloud, you would flow. So it wouldn't really matter the one that you start with. It depends on what you see. But from a personal point of view, I think Azure is a little bit easier to learn, and because they are more readily content for you to learn with.
Okay, thank you. I believe you've answered big time solutions. On to Awad. Kindly unmute and share your question.
Hi Ken, hi everybody. Just wanted to ask. This is just a pet question. If you want to greet people in the night, you say good night the way you say good morning. All right.
I believe so.
Thanks Ken for the session. Really eye opening. So my question is, how do you maintain? How do you do the knowledge retention? Yeah. So you've talked about different technologies. You've talked about Azure. So Azure has a myriad of services. You've talked about Terraform, complex in its way. You've talked about DevOps. That's another jargon with so many other things in there. So, how do you maintain all this knowledge at the same time? The rate at which you read is the same rate at which you forget. So, how do you make sure you have everything intact?
Hey, that's a brilliant question, and it's a very valid one. So one thing that I would say is that before you even get confused with the three, let's talk about the three major ones. Uh, Oracle is also a contention there, but that's a debate for another day. So on the three major ones, Azure, AWS, and GCP. So what I would advise is choose one and get really good at it. So when you decide that I'm going to start a journey on AWS, choose AWS, get very good at it, and after that, now you can. It actually even becomes very easier for you to learn the rest. Uh, Now on the other technologies, you really don't have to master them. I know it's a lot. It's a lot, and then there's so much that you can retain. But again, remember my soft skills comment that Google is your friend. So as much as you have the concept, getting to uh, a quick research to implement that concept becomes easier. So once you become a master of one, learn the others gradually, and the other technologies, as much as you have the concept, you would get your way.
All right, makes sense. Thank you.
We have another question from Steven. He's asking, what are some common challenges faced by cloud engineers in the industry?
I think the greatest one would be changing technologies and new technologies that come in play day after another. The other one would be, uh, I would say, uh, networks bandwidth. So if you don't have your initial scoping of whatever that is being deployed in cloud, you will also always be facing issues with users or whoever is consuming the service that is deployed in cloud, that the service would be uh, better on premise than on cloud. And lastly, I would say change. So people are always resistant to change. So especially if you're coming from an on-premise environment, going to a cloud environment, convincing people or even having the resources deployed and convincing people that it's a better environment than the other becomes a little bit difficult. And that's those are the major ones that I would think on top of my head.
Okay, thank you. I believe that your question has been answered, Stephen. Another question is from Samson. What advice do you have for career growth once someone has established themselves as a cloud engineer?
Um, I think the biggest advice I would give is keep learning and I've noticed nowadays people tend to just accumulate certifications, and I do not think they're enough. So show show your skills. I've seen major uh, cloud providers now providing cloud skills based assessments that you can be able to show that you can be able to actually do the particular job. For example, the applied skills in Microsoft. I think GCP has skills boost. I think AWS also has some. I can't remember how they're calling them, but other than just having a paper that I'm uh, uh, at solutions architect on AWS, have something that shows that you can be able to implement those skills. Do a project and post a project somewhere. I think nowadays everyone has a GitHub account. Show your work somewhere that somebody can be able to go somewhere and see something that Kennedy has deployed or done. And then lastly, and again, always be a critical thinker. Do not just stay in a cocoon that this is what I know, and because I learned this, nothing is going to change. Technology changes every day, and the way things were working yesterday, you might find them different in the morning. So always uh, think fast, quick, and on your feet. Yeah.
I believe some you are content with that answer. We have a question from Victor. How do you get that first entry level cloud job?
Yeah, that is always the challenge. And again, so the best thing that would uh, get you to that first job. First of all, don't be choosy. So I started that I mentioned that I started as an intern somewhere, and uh, if you can get uh, somewhere just to in Swahili to say it, kuingiza kichwa, just somewhere that you can uh, first of all position yourself and show your skills from there. Now implement those projects, do something, and people will definitely uh, see that and help you advance in the career.
Okay, thank you. James Juma is asking, you kindly touch on work-life balance. How do you make sure that work doesn't interfere with your normal life?
I think that is something that I've really struggled with, and especially in cloud and in tech, work-life balance uh, becomes a struggle, and personally, and especially remote work. Thanks, Sam, and especially remote work. Uh, Personally, I don't think I managed to achieve that, although I really try. So, how I would advise for you to maintain that balance is uh, do as much as possible within the time frame of your work, and after that, if you work 8 to 5, uh, do whatever that you're supposed to achieve, meet every deadline, meet every milestone that you're supposed to meet within that hour, and with that, no one would need to look for you after hours. And then maintain a culture that when if it's 5 and you shut down the machine, then you would not need to uh, use that machine again until the next morning at 8. But again, the most uh, important bit is that you are productive within the time that you're supposed to be productive, and the rest I think would flow. To me, I've not maintained it. I know, I know me. Yes, Paul. I mean, while to work from bed, uh, but I think it's something that, especially if you're starting young, that you need to have at the back on your mind, and it becomes a practice, and you set up a routine.
We have another question from Clinton. He's asking, which other career would you pursue if you are to move away from cloud?
Person from cloud or from tech?
He specified from cloud.
So if it's from cloud, networking definitely. I think networking is my first love. So I would be I would be a network engineer any day, and thirdly a DevOps engineer. I enjoy how the building blocks of DevOps. So it intrigues me. So those three definitely I would go for.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Guy. What underlying skills would one need to help transition into cloud easier?
So I think I covered that on the presentation, but I'll go through a few again. So the underlying skills, especially for the tech bit, I think the most important one is system administration, basic one. And again, when I say this too much, Samson tells me that it is because I love networking. But networking, and I think this a lot of time because it is the building blocks of everything, of any technology that you would have. So basic system administration, and when I say system administration, it means uh, both Windows and Linux, and then networking. And when I mention networking, is basic TCP/IP, DNS, HTTPS, um, things like those. So those, I believe, with those three skills, you can start up as a cloud engineer. Samson, I also saw a message pop up of you are curious of what other career I would do if I was not in tech. I don't think I would leave tech. So if I'm not in tech, I'll still go back to tech. So Hiram, I think I've answered that one. So Ruth, back to you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you have any more questions? Anyone with any question for the speaker? I believe silence is an answer, so we can close that chapter of questions and answer. So I'll request Mr. Kennedy to share his parting shot with us.